Andy Kaufman was a born entertainer and had so much respect for the professional wrestling business, and he was an absolute natural. This episode shows why. I'm Charles Renton with my review of Tales from the Territories, Episode 2, Andy Kaufman versus the King of Memphis. So, same panel from the Memphis Wrestling Territory episode that debuted last week. Check out my review of that. It's Jerry Jarrett, Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, obviously, since he's the main key component that's still alive that can talk about all this, because Andy unfortunately died almost 40 years ago, very suddenly, very sadly. Dutch Mantel and Jimmy Hart, who had some great insight as far as the entertainment aspect. And one thing I'll say about the Andy Kaufman-Jerry Lawler rivalry, it just felt so natural and so real because they kept kayfabe alive for so long. Jerry Lawler even said after Andy Kaufman tragically passed away, I don't have anything nice to say about him. I'm sorry he died, but I don't have anything nice to say about him. And then they talk about the Man on the Moon stuff. They talk about the lead up to the great match where the Mid-South Coliseum sells out. And even though obviously it was a gimmick match, the fans were absolutely ready to see Andy Kaufman get destroyed, and they got what they paid for and then some. But man, Andy Kaufman, you can just see, you can feel the respect oozing from him in these interviews, even when he's making fun of the Memphis wrestling, Southern fans, all that stuff, and just making fun of them. You could tell he was having the time of his life. He understood he could never be a full-time wrestler, but as a kid, he was a big wrestling fan, loved Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, even used a few of his antics, a few of his quirks during that match with Lawler, and he just was so good. Lawler did feud with everybody. He feuded with young Hulk Hogan, Nick Bockwinkel over the AWA Championship, Terry Funk. Oh, my eye. God, I love Terry Funk. The Andy Kaufman rivalry, that feud, that was one of the main things that people remember Memphis wrestling for very fondly a number of years after the territory closed down. Even after the glory days and they kept going along, people still remember that. Lance Russell really made it work because Lance Russell was just a great commentator. Him and Dave Brown, great commentary duo. The ratings were through the roof. The live Memphis wrestling show. And then the towns like Louisville, Evansville, Indiana, Memphis, obviously the Memphis Coliseum, or the Mid-South Coliseum. And it was nice to see the footage of, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers and just, the reenactments and stuff like that. And Lawler talking about how Andy said about his stand-up, I wanted to make my, I wanted to make the audience uncomfortable. And he was known for doing that. I'm not saying that Andy wasn't weird and he wasn't, I'm not going to say he was the best guy ever. I obviously never met the guy, and depending on the people you talk to, apparently he was a really nice guy and a really shy guy, but he was also very strange. But that being said, you could tell he was an entertainer. Taxi, that was pretty much the series that put him on the map. Also great that Christopher Lloyd was in that and got to launch his career. But, thank you, all that, just the great stuff that he did. Like, just Andy being so entertaining. And he parlayed that into being the intergender wrestling champion. He would have, he would tour around and he would beat women in shoots. Actually, he would work with, I believe, one particular woman on some shows, but he would actually call women in from the crowds and even had his comedy shows, but they weren't wrestling fans. He wanted to do this on a big stage. He talked to Vince McMahon Sr., who didn't want to go for it. He said, Andy, we appreciate what you do, but we really don't want to do that because then it will make our business seem, it'll make us seem ridiculous, so we're not really interested. Bill Apter, great photographer, magazine coverage, all that, covered the Memphis wrestling, and he covered other territories as well, but Memphis got a lot of coverage from his magazine, which was big at the time, because his magazine coverage, there was no internet, there was none of this stuff. Magazines are where people really got their info from. Jerry Jarrett was a little tentative, but he was not quite sure if it was actually Andy Kaufman. He said, well, here, talk to Jerry Lawler. Here's his number. He calls Jerry. He flies down there. While he was doing other movie stuff, comedy stuff, whatever, he was going down to Memphis and the Memphis territories and other towns that they talk about here a little bit later. And he was just talking about how, this was going to be, I wanted to do something. I just wanted to do this one night, wrestle these women in front of this crowd. So the crowd at the Mid-South Coliseum goddamn hated him because he was making fun of the Memphis wrestling fans. Oh, all that. And God, it was so great to see this shit. And he picked women out of the crowd and he beat them. I mean, safely, but, he did make sure he was smart enough to know not to go on his back. And then he was able to tire him out and beat him. And it worked. Even though it was gimmicky, cartoonish, ridiculous, it worked because Memphis was known for being ridiculous, cartoonish, but also real as far as how they presented their talents. Second week, he got brought back. Andy was surprised. He thought he could just do this once and said, no, this actually could work. He goes through 4 other women. A woman called Foxy comes down that I swear I saw a picture of and I thought was Sapphire. I thought that was Sapphire. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's her. If it is her, then there was no information on her. But nevertheless, she almost beat him, but then he managed to tire her out and beat her. And then, Lawler came up with this idea, bring her to TV, do these interviews, he's going to train her, and then she's going to beat him this time. They have a return match, and he's able to beat her. And even though she almost beat him, he's able to beat her again. And then he's put the boots through her and everything, saying, Lawler, this is your girl, all this. And then Lawler ends up getting involved, and all he has to do is shove him. And that sets it off right there. You can't touch me, I'm a big Hollywood actor. Just being the goddamn full-on dick that he is. So great, so entertaining. He was doing some great work here. And he even went in, after all this, I will sue your ass, I will do all this. And then he went back and talked to Lawler. How was that? Oh, that was really good. He would always call him Mr. Lawler because he was respectful. Dutch put the thing over, saying he didn't even want to know if it was kayfabe or not. He wanted to actually just appreciate it as a fan. And he was in the territory at the time. Andy has his lawyer. It was Bob Zamuda. And it was actually, I believe, the guy that played the referee during these, intergender championship match things that he did, because Andy was just smart like that. He met a girl at a place called Libertyland that I think was one of the ones that he wrestled and used her for these, used her for some of these. And they kept just building this. And Jerry Calhoun was a referee in the Memphis territory. And he was one of the only other people that knew. And Jerry Lawler said, let's work on this. Here's how we'll do a suplex. I'll put you down easy. Here's how we're going to do the pile driver. I will put you down safely. Get your feet up. Don't kick them up too high. Kick them up enough. I will, put you down easy. We could sell that. We could do whatever. The Coliseum was legit sold out. 11,500 some odd people. I don't remember how much the Mid-South Coliseum actually could sell. It looked like a really, really cool place, actually. I could only imagine what a concert would be like there. Because if you have it, you would just have, like, the concert thing right down there, maybe in the middle. So the noise would just engulf. And for wrestling, it would just be perfect because it's right down there. It's a bowl and it's shaped right, just everything's focused right down in the ring. I mean, granted, that's how a lot of arenas are, but this had just more of almost like a feel like where it would just naturally engulf you. They do the thing where Lawler's like, he says, oh, well, he can put a headlock on me and I'll just do this. And Kaufman, meanwhile, is stalling, doing the whole thing, going back to Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and then pick up for the back suplex. And he takes it enough to where he sells it. I mean, he lands on his head, but he takes it enough and it's like, oh, he's all like this and whatever. And then he takes a pile driver. Pile driver was illegal by the, made illegal by the Tennessee Athletic Commission. So Andy Kaufman technically got a win over Jerry Lawler. There aren't a lot of people that can say that without getting a win back, or without Lawler getting his win back. But it worked because Kaufman was out. And Lawler's like, okay, match is over. This guy's been knocking the fans. This guy did this and said he was going to sue me. Well, let's see him sue me after I do this. Hits him with a second pile driver, and Kaufman's down. And, Lawler's waving and all this and everything. Ha, 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 all this. And I laid this guy out. And Jerry Calhoun goes over and says, he says he needs an ambulance. And Lawler's like, no, we did an ambulance thing. It costs like $300. And he says he'll pay for it. Fine, call the ambulance. So he does. Fans are throwing trash in the ring. Fans are throwing stuff at him. They are cursing him. Kaufman, reportedly, having the time of his life here. And you could tell. Bill Watts, who was the owner and promoter of Mid-South Wrestling. And this was 82, 83. This was 82, 83 because it was unfortunately right before Kaufman ended up having serious health issues and would die of lung cancer, I believe, or cancer that went from his lungs to his brain. But anyway, Bill Watts called Jerry and said, Jerry, I just want to tell you how proud I am to be in the same sport as you because you took that actor and you told him what for. You proved that, not anybody can just get in the ring here. You taught him a lesson. Bill Watts, one of the most serious individuals in the wrestling business ever. He bought it. He bought it. People in the hospital reportedly bought it. And he stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Now, he paid for the whole thing. He also never cashed his checks. They say that at the end. Never cashed his checks. Not that he didn't appreciate the money. Not that he thought the money was beneath him. He's just like, I don't want to do this. I don't need to get paid for this. Thank you for paying me. It would have been nice maybe if I'm sure he probably left money for his parents. And I think he had one child. So I imagine he probably left money for him. He just wanted them for souvenirs. Just to prove, hey, I did it. Look what I was able to do. It's so cool. Kid, lifelong dream. Then he wears a neck brace. He sells that for months. He's got the soft neck brace, all that. They have footage of Orson Welles interviewing him. How cool was that? And that he wanted to wear the neck brace on the season of Taxi. They basically threatened to write him out of the show if he didn't take the neck brace off, so he did. I think it actually would have been even better if they had said that he got in an accident or something like that and done it because you know what? It could have added even more credibility, but maybe Hollywood felt that the wrestling business was beneath them on a show called Taxi. But nevertheless, Tony Danza of all people, bought into it, and he wanted to go down and box Jerry Lawler, wanted to beat him up. That would have been interesting. The David Letterman show where Kaufman even called up Lawler and said, what if you'd slap me? I mean, that would be really cool. Well, we can't do that. It's taped. They wouldn't show it. Yeah, I know, but wouldn't it be cool if that happened? So they get all riled up that, I'm not going to go over the slap. I'm not going to go over that because it's best to hear it described. But just, and all this stuff's kind of happening and whatever. Nothing's really going on. And this was in the first few months of the David Letterman show. And Lawler gets up and slaps Kaufman, just slapped him. He sells it. He's down. They go into, they take Lawler into the back. They take a break, even though they're taped. They take a break. For like 10 minutes, Lawler, would you like to come out and do the rest of this? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, I didn't know if we were going to do this. And he's over on the other side, wanting to come back over. And he starts just throwing every expletive, every variation of fuck, motherfucker, all this, you shit, all this stuff. I know I can't say these words on television. I apologize. But damn it, Lawler, you did this. It's just going off on him. It's great. It's great stuff. And even threw water on him, and they got Lawler out. They said, well, we're going to take you out of the elevator, or out through the elevator, because, well, Kaufman's elevator doesn't exactly go to the top. And Letterman even said on the Man on the Moon set, when Jim Carrey was playing Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler was there, and I don't know why Jim Ross played the Lance Russell role, and Lance Russell was the ring announcer. I know that JR even said, I never understood that, but nevertheless, Andy continued to cut promos. Letterman said about the Man on the Moon set, on the Man on the Moon set, that like that episode helped launch us. It was in just the first few months of the show, and that actually helped launch them. And he said this is after like the glory days, because Letterman's show ran for a while, but let's be honest, started to really have some issues towards the end, probably because Letterman was burned out, and also late night TV has gotten really, really shit. Thank you, Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel. Especially Fallon. God, he can't do anything right. But anyway, Andy says he's going to bring somebody in to beat up Lawler. Forms an alliance with Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart even talks about how he was burned by Lawler and he's wearing the Invisible Man stuff, like all the mummy, like he had his eyes exposed, he had his mouth exposed, but everything else was bandaged. Here's what we're going to do. Let's dress Andy Kaufman up like that. Lawler's wrestling Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA Championship because they had an alliance with the AWA, a co-promotion, so to speak, talent trade agreement, whatever you want to call it. And they had the bandage guy. Jimmy Hart's interfering. Wait a second, here's Jimmy Hart. And he clocks Lawler, roll up 1, 2, 3. So they screw them over. And then they do handicap matches where Jimmy Hart's like, okay, we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And then he goes, Andy doesn't. 1, 2, 3, he goes. So they do it twice. And then Jimmy stays back the third time. Andy goes. Andy gets hit with the pile driver. Another DQ. Andy has another victory over Jerry Lawler. And then, Andy even went with Jimmy. They traveled a little bit. They went to Graceland. He carved his name on Elvis's gate, I believe. Was it Elvis's gate or was it Lawler's gate? I'm actually trying to remember. It was a gate. The gate community. And then they talk about Andy's declining health. Jerry Lawler had the Jerry Lawler Show, a talk show. And Andy even coughed a few times and said that he was diagnosed with lung cancer. I would like to stop for just a second, go off topic. People have noticed the cough that I have. About 5-something years ago, I had a really, really bad bout of super flu that really did affect me and kind of damaged how I talk sometimes. So that's why I cough sometimes. It's also allergies, a combination of things. I apologize. It's not cancer, just saying that. So, back to the review. Andy's diagnosed with lung cancer. He passes away tragically. His parents talked to him on the Man on the Moon set and said, for years we hated you because we thought you broke our son's neck, but we found out that wasn't the case. Andy did. It obviously ended up being for show, but Andy was that good at keeping kayfabe. How Andy respected wrestling, never cashes checks. And there you go. That is the Andy Kaufman versus the King of Memphis episode of Tales from the Territories. Next week is the AWA episode. Also, I want to say right at the end that I've been able to review these first two because I've had schedule changes and I've been able to watch them not live, but immediately after they're done recording and catch up on them because I'm reviewing so much stuff. From now on, they're probably going to be up Wednesday morning, afternoon, so I do apologize for that. However, let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments. Please like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rentlin. I'll see you soon.